Have you ever heard people talking about building a personal brand and thought that it wasn't the best use of your time because you're trying to build something bigger? The hard truth is that people don't connect with brands they don't know. They connect with people who represent that brand in the early days, and it's not until much later that the masses are hearing about a new brand that's taking over the market. I'm John Hill, aka Small Mountain, and in this episode of the Founders Growth Show, I'm sitting down with Michael R. Hunter, the co founder of Spiffy Checkouts and PersonalBrand.com. Michael has driven over $1 billion in revenue for people whose whole business operates around their personal brand, and he's peeling back the curtain on what it actually takes to build and scale a real business. We break down the massive structural differences between starting a company and simply monetizing a skill set, why a powerful personal brand is actually a strategic operational unlock in your business, not just fluffy social media posts and content, and how to run your business at 85% capacity to deliberately prepare for explosive opportunities. As founders, we often mistake frantic, massive action for progress. But if you keep redlining yourself and your business without a real clear definition of success and a repeatable delivery system, you're just building a trap. If you want to stop scrambling and start scaling, you can't afford to skip this episode. Let's dig into it. All right, so Michael, thank you for coming on the show. I'm very excited to have you here. I've got a bunch of cool little areas to dive into, but before we do that, can you talk a little bit about the two companies that you're running right now?
Yeah, so today I run personalbrand.com, which is a creative and business strategy agency, and Spiffy Checkouts, which is a tech enabled software company in the fintech space, servicing the same demographic. So we work with authors, speakers, coaches, thought leaders, personal brands. And I've been in this space since 2010, so going on 16 years in some way, shape, or form, serving the same ICP. And so, by all means, where we're at today, doing what we're doing today isn't where we got started. But Spiffy's become a staple, like the gold standard of efficient and effective checkout processes, and run payments for people like Amy Porterfield, Jay Shetty, Matthew Hussey, Jefferson Fisher, Darren Hardy, all these big names in the industry. And most people haven't heard about us because we're bootstrapped, profitable, debt free. My business partner and I coined ourselves the hypeless romantics. And so we've just focused on building a great product. And then with personalbrand.com, really reinforcing this next generation of leaders, heart-centered, mission-driven leaders with the right strategies and the right tooling to have a bigger impact and make more money, with the intention of having those funds fuel their mission and fuel the impact.
Okay, I'm going to jump in right there. Okay, so did the personal brand stuff show up as a product of doing the checkout work? Was it kind of like, okay, how else can we serve the same community? Or how did you get to that? How did you get to the place to where you have two businesses selling to the same avatar? Because I think most people would try to build the other business on a completely different avatar, which creates its own friction and challenges.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a huge fan of, first and foremost, the biggest mistake that we see people make is trying to mimic what people are doing now versus how they got started. So we look at the
Oh,
Gary V's, the Tony Robbins of the world, the Brennan Burchards, and we see what they're doing now. We try to mimic the moves that they're making now versus how they got started. We
hmm.
built Spiffy to an 8-figure valuation before we really reinforced it with services again. And
Huh.
so it is kind of an evolutionary process. So Spiffy was born out of our marketing agency. We were a growth marketing agency doing big product launches for big name author, speakers, coaches. We got known for driving outsized results because we were creating mobile optimized and conversion optimized checkout flows back in 2013, 2014. And
Okay.
then we took that productized service and turned it into a software product. And between 2020 and 2024, all we were doing was focused on building Spiffy. So we had agency allowed us a marketing agency allowed us to know all the existing tools, get a feel for the landscape, get paid to build relationships with all the big players. And we got to see the cracks in all the existing options. We couldn't find the best checkout tool in the market. And so we decided to build it. So we went from agency services to starting a software company as a side hustle, to the software company becoming the main focus. And then once that was established, going back and really leading the charge with personalbrand.com.
Dude, what a cool story. Because we were talking about this before we hit record, right? Most founders that I know, and I would imagine most of them that you know, have tried to launch a second business too early, right? And we've talked about it here on the show with other people in the past. And I appreciate you wanting to make the main thing, right? Not trying to do double duty because, we're not really great at multitasking. We can lie to ourselves, but it's not super helpful. Um, I'm curious, right? What have you found or noticed sales side, right? Because I'm obsessed with the idea of selling hard things versus soft things, right? And so things like brand automations can sometimes feel like very soft, right? Versus like here's leads, here's a widget, here's a SaaS tool. Have you noticed a difference in selling the SaaS product versus what works for you when you're selling the personal branding thing, just from a process perspective?
Ironically, it's much easier to sell a $50,000 brand package than it is a $99 a month software package.
Really?
So, yeah. And so much of this comes back to product market fit. Brand is a pretty fluffy, airy, abstract concept for most stages of business, but
Mhm.
there's a specific stage of business where it actually is the missing link. It is the strategic unlock that makes everything else in the business run more effectively and more efficiently. And so I think that's really where oftentimes a lot of concepts that seem fluffy are probably actually fluffy to a lot of different businesses at varying stages. And it's really
Yeah.
just finding that product market fit. What vertical, what industry, what stage of business does your product or service actually drive tangible results in a short period of time? Because at the end of the day, that's really what people are buying.
Uh-huh.
And there are, like brand as a concept, um, is something that when you do it too early in the process, it's not valuable. But once you have a team, once you know what a good customer from a bad customer is, once you know what a good hire from a bad hire is, having that brand orientation and having your entire team rowing in the same direction, speaking the same language, spoon feeding your raving fan customers memorable, powerful, and repeatable language that they can go out and talk about you in a powerful way. That's where brand really becomes a strategic unlock. If you don't have any raving fans out there talking about you, spending a bunch of time honing in your messaging isn't the constraint in the business. But there is a specific stage in business where that becomes a friction point, and solving that problem can actually create some explosive growth in a very short period of time.
Wow, man. Okay, I have a bunch of questions about that, right? So one of the things here is I like to try to make things as black and as white as possible, right? And so I can really appreciate this idea that a lot of people get fixated on brand from the jump, right? And I like how you talked about it that if you don't have any raving fans yet, you're you're trying to find a way to find your raving fans, you know? When should someone lean into that reverse engineering the greatness and everything? Is there a certain number of clients? Is it a revenue dollar amount? Is it only when you're moving beyond yourself and starting to bring on team? Like, how should someone be thinking about that so that way they're thinking about it the right way, not overshooting the gap?
Yeah, in my opinion, everyone needs to be brand conscious from day one, but there's a time and a place where it makes sense to heavily invest into creating brand.
Mm.
First and foremost, we just need to baseline the conversation because out there in the marketplace, if you ask 10 different people what brand is, you're going to get 10 different answers. There's a lot of people that conflate brand with branding and branding with content marketing.
Mm.
You have people out there on social media, down our news feeds every single day. Hey, I'm gonna teach you how to build a personal brand. Here's how to podcast. I'm gonna teach you how to build a personal brand. Here's how to YouTube. I'm gonna teach you how to build a personal brand. Here's how to grow up, blow up on Instagram. All those things are top of funnel content marketing actions that are aspects of building a online presence, which then create brand. Um, but at the end of the day, brand is not branding and branding is not content marketing. I equate it to fishing. Just because you're fishing doesn't mean you have fish. Just because you're branding or content marketing doesn't mean you have brand.
Oh,
Branding is what you say about you, but brand is what your customers say about you. And so there's a specific point where you need to be brand conscious, meaning you need to be optimizing your business not just for the sale and understanding the sale is when your business starts.
Mhm.
And the entire business needs to be optimized to create raving fans, which is how you create brand. Most people think that you have to have a large social media following in order to be a personal brand these days. And I've just been grateful and privileged and in a lot of ways lucky just to be in this industry for so long and just have the conversations with the big names in the industry in the private rooms, right?
Mhm.
In the strategy room, doing the big launches. I get to see behind the curtain of what's actually happening on the other side. And oftentimes there are people that have millions of followers, they have the likes, the comments, the engagement, but that's really not what's driving the business result. And especially in the social media influencer game these days, there's so many people that, again, millions of followers, likes, views, comments, engagement. And as soon as they stop posting, no one's talking about them. They
Mhm.
actually don't have a brand. And so I think I'm the one of the only people in the personal brand space that says you don't even need to be active on social media to have a personal brand. Now, I'm not saying that don't do it,
Yeah.
but especially when you're early on, if social media isn't something that gives you energy, you have to lean into your strengths. And so there's just so many different ways that you can build brand, you can build momentum without having to have a social media presence.
Man, well said. Because I didn't know anything about any of this stuff whenever I first started selling websites, right? But looking for partnership stuff, I started to connect with agencies and brand people and stuff, and I thought it was like this kind of mystical thing, right? I thought it was magic, And then a friend of mine said a very similar line, right? Brand is or I'm sorry, marketing is who you say you are, brand is what other people say you are when you're not in the room, right? And I'm so thankful that I heard that from this guy. His name's Chuck Bulligny. Shout out Chuck Bulligny, because like that's what set me on this path of this, right? And so fast forward a little bit, I start writing on LinkedIn, I start writing on Facebook, just trying to, you know, put myself out there in a meaningful way, And I just remember thinking about that line of like, don't try to like create a persona, right? Because like that was making it hard for me to write. But if I found my way of just like showing up and trying to help other people, like that's where it started to come from. And that kind of leads me to this thing because now people will come ask me, they're like, how'd you do this? And it's like, I just found a way that I could show up as myself, like consistently enough that it had some impact on it. I think it's very easy in the early days to try to route yourself up to what you think your brand should be.
For sure.
I think the beauty, right, and awareness is like not trying to map it up to a higher level, but it's being really clean and clear about who you are. If you're the no frills person, be the no frills person going after no frills people that appreciate no frills solutions, right? Don't try to put yourself at this level of quality that you're not because you're creating all the friction in the business.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's at the core of what we do at personalbrand.com is we just uncover and present the credibility, the influence, the authority, the passion, the mission, the purpose that's already there.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, that's the only way to do anything that's sustainable is to have it feel like it's 100% in alignment. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of people out there online that everything's an illusion. Like you cannot trust what you see on social media. Like
Mhm.
the cars, the house, like all of it, and especially with AI now, like you don't even need to
Oh,
go
yeah.
rent the Airbnb. You don't even need to go rent the Lambo. You can just spin it up with AI tokens. And
Yep.
so much of what this next evolution of building a personal brand uh, is going to be the raw, authentic, messing up on your words, still posting it anyways. Like
Mhm.
perfection is not the standard. It is the imperfection. People want to have that level of trust and community, and they want to learn and be mentored by other people that are doing cool things. And so, yeah, authenticity, alignment, mission, purpose. That like those are the people that we really rally behind. Like at the end of the day, our clients are amazing. They're absolute badass humans, which makes our job easier. And that's also, I think, a business lesson as well. It's like that's where having a niche, having an ICP. It's like, what client makes it easy for you to hit grand slam out of after grand slam, like hit it out of the park every single time,
Mhm.
and only take on clients that make it easy for you to have a relatively light lift in order to get the end result. Could we do a personal brand for anyone and everyone? Yeah, and it's just way easier, way faster when people already have a business, they already know who they're talking to, they already have products and services that are getting results, and so we're able to just create a process that asks questions from a 360 degree perspective, and
Mhm.
then the brand reveals itself. And so we just ask questions that reveal the picture, and metaphorically, and then we just paint the picture. And that's essentially what the process of our services are. And so our
Okay.
processes are more of a revealing than it is manufacturing.
So, okay, man, I love this, right? Because that would indicate to me that that even at your tier of working with these badasses that you work with, there's still maybe a little bit of like rose-colored glasses, right? Of maybe a little bit of a gap between like who they actually are versus who they're trying to be or purporting themselves to be. How can someone this might be a weird question. How can someone know if they're trying to push themselves up to a level that doesn't align? Like, can they find that early, or is it just by experience? How can they go through their clarity process, right? Is how I think about it. Who are you? In a way that
Yeah.
they don't paint themselves up into a tier that isn't really who they are. Because it's hard, I think, and this is just from the lens of like writing on LinkedIn. It takes a long time to show up and write as yourself, to show up in a conversation as yourself. How can brand new founders not want to show up with that like stuffed shirt version of themselves? How can they be more authentic to themselves in the early days? Do you have any advice or tips on that?
Yeah. I mean, to be as frank and direct and as genuine as
That's why we're
possible.
here.
Yeah,
No punches pulled.
yeah, most people have not done enough reps to earn the right to charge premium rates, but everyone wants to charge premium rates in order to create the lifestyle or say they hit some revenue number, but they actually haven't done enough reps to create a predictable and repeatable process that gets people outsized results. And that's really what clients are buying. They're buying a result.
Mhm.
And there are just so many reps. There's so much time. There's so much effort. There's so much energy that needs to go into creating that predictable and repeatable process. But you can't create the process before you make a sale. And this is where there's two types of entrepreneurs. There's entrepreneurs that are trying to perfect everything before they even get started. And then there's entrepreneurs that are getting paid to learn.
Mhm.
And I don't care if you're an entrepreneur trying to make your first six figures in a year or you're already crushing it and you're making six figures a day. You're still getting paid to learn.
Epic.
Entrepreneurship is a evolutionary game. It's an iterative game. The
Mhm.
bigger you grow, the more revenue you have, the more problems you have, not the less. Most people think that once they have an eight-figure business, all their problems are going to go away. I promise you, you're going to have much bigger, more complex problems that would actually crush most people that are at six figures trying to grow to eight figures. And so
Yeah.
you just have to be radically honest that there's so much work, there's so many reps that have to take place to get from where you're at to where you want to go. And you just
Mhm.
have to be humble and patient to do those reps and go through that process and create raving fans, not just create sales.
Yeah.
And that's really how a business is built. One of
Man.
the biggest messages I'm really passionate about, disseminating into the marketplace is just around patience. I was a very impatient person early on in my career in a
Mhm.
lot of ways. I'm still working on it, but I conflated patience with pacificity, being
Oh.
passive.
Yeah.
Like patience is a passive act is a passive thing when actually patience is active preparation. And it's more
Mhm.
of like an energetic demeanor of being patient while you're working really, really hard, not being tied to the outcome because you get paid on the efforts that you put in 6 or 12 months ago. And most people are putting in a bunch of effort right now, thinking that all of a sudden they're going to have $100,000 month when that's most likely not going to be the case. And so being patient
Being patient. And
is, is, is a critical aspect to building big.
dude, and sorry to step on your toes at the end of that there. Like,
There you
it's so funny because in my older version of myself when I was still in corporate sales and I wasn't really taking sales seriously, I would show up and I would ask these questions, right? Because I'm a process driven guy. And it would always put me as the troublemaker, right? John's not bought in because he's not taking massive action and everything. And it's like, I'll go take massive action as long as I know that the action is leading me towards the goal, but I'm not going to go do a bunch of busy work, right? And it feels like you just want me to go do a bunch of busy work, you know? And so what's funny now is like now my clients appreciate, hey, let's have a plan. Let's not just be in a scramble because we're going to talk about this here in a second. You can't scramble your way past a certain point, right? And working with other people, like I think that ceiling is much lower when you've made the decision you want to work with other people, right? Because you can stay in a hustle mode of just pushing and pushing and pushing and blocking and tackling as a soloist for a very long time. But that's why this is called founders growth and not entrepreneurial growth, because founders want a team, right? And that means we have to be looking for that calm consistency before we bring in other people, you know? And you get to work with your wife, which I think is a very cool thing, right? Um, what is the biggest challenge about working with your spouse in your perspective,
Hmm.
if there's one that comes to mind?
I mean, Natalie and I, we have the most epic love story ever. It will be a movie one day, better than The Notebook. We got to write the screenplay at some point. Um, and so, what you see today is a culmination of over 16 years of a lot of ups and downs and time apart and healing, rebuilding trust. At the core, Natalie and I are both mission driven people. We're
Mhm,
both entrepreneurs. And in a lot of ways, that can be challenging. I think it's most challenging when you have a spouse or a partner that's also entrepreneurial, but they're building something else.
mm,
It becomes a little bit more of a competitive energy, even though it might not appear that way.
hmm,
Um, the fact that Natalie and I are both mission led, heart centered, and on the same mission, building the same thing, it's one of the most deeply fulfilling things ever.
that's
And
cool.
both of us would rather be on calls late at night than watching Netflix. Both of us would rather walk and talk about business than walk and talk about the latest movie or TV show or
Mhm,
concert. We'd rather go to a personal development event than go to a concert. And so like so much of it is just values alignment. And I'm not saying that we're right or but by any means,
sure,
like
yeah,
that's just what works for us is just like being on the same page. And I think that's ultimately what is most important is in a relationship, first and foremost, having, as open communication as possible. That's
mhm,
one of the things that Natalie and I are both really good at is just openly communicating constantly about personal stuff, about business stuff. Does it go well all of the time? No. I think
sure,
most people think that a great relationship is a relationship absent of conflict, but nothing could be further from the truth. You need to be able to have conflict, but have conflict in a healthy way.
mhm,
And so that's where just communication comes in, and just being oriented, being on the same team, having that common goal, providing context to any difficult discussion, that you're on the same page and that you're looking to resolve something, and having that mutual commitment to a positive outcome.
yeah, man. Now, I'm
Um,
I'm curious, right? Because I get to work with my wife, but I don't have another partner outside of my wife, right? You have a third partner here, right? Do you guys do anything unique or specific to make sure that that balance with the third partner is there? Because you're going to have a deeper relationship with your spouse. You're going to have a lot of conversations outside of the main channels of the business and stuff. Do you guys do anything to make sure that all those lines of communication are as tight and as deep?
I mean, naturally, it's not going to be as tight or deep as,
Sure.
just proximity. Like Natalie and I are, have a lot more close proximity, but partnerships are the key to everything that I'm doing. Me and my business partner, Jeremy, we've built our agency together. We built our software company together. And then with personal brand agency, we have a partner, Jonathan Gray, who's our chief brand officer, who's done brand campaigns for Fortune 1000 companies. And so we're bringing that level of brand strategy and creative talent to personal brands.
Mhm.
And then Natalie's a world-class coach. She has her coaching institute. So there's this common mission under personal brand, but there's also many subsidiaries
Yeah.
that allow each person to fully own the area that they're most talented at, all while us building a bigger um, business, a bigger mission, a bigger purpose. And so, while it is two different companies, there are some different products and services and offerings that are compartmentalized with very talented people at the head of like what they're best at. So,
Mhm.
I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think at the end of the day, you know, there's hiring, partnering, there's tips out there, but there's no magic recipe. Like, and for
Agree.
me, it's so critically important. I hate talking about myself, believe it or not. I hate promoting myself, but I'm the type of
Same.
person that would like take my shirt off my back for someone else. I love finding talented people and promoting them
Hmm.
and talking them up. And so that's really something that I've known about that. I've known that about myself for a very long time. And as of like maybe the last 2 or 3 years, that's really where I'm orienting a lot of my time, energy, and effort is leveraging my credibility, my connections, the authority of personalbrand.com, the track record of, Spiffy checkouts, doing $1 billion worth of transaction volume, and really bring our client base, our reputation, our audience, and partnering with other people that are really, really talented, but like me, aren't good at marketing or selling themselves, and I can be that advocate for them. And that's seems to have been working quite well for us.
That's epic, man. So I'd like to change gears a little bit and talk more about your path as a founder, right? Because
Yeah.
we've had a couple of conversations at this point, and you're a very driven dude. And one of the things that I really appreciate talking about is when that driven person can't be all the things anymore, right? And sometimes that's a very hard season of going from being a doer to enabling the doing of others, right? What was that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, so much of it is really knowing yourself. I can't remember if it's Plato or Socrates or one of those philosophers. Man, I gotta brush up on my philosophy now. But it's just like know yourself. And in the early innings of entrepreneurship, for most people, usually it's a person with a passion or a skill set, and they're selling a service that they themselves can render.
Mhm.
And that is a great way to get started at, with very little startup costs. It's
Yep.
a great way to break free from your full-time job. You can hustle, grit, and grind your way to high six figures, low seven figures, but you can't do that to eight. And you can't really run a seven-figure business with a lot of freedom if you are simply monetizing a skill set. So one of the things that we say in our 3.5 day workshop is there's a difference between monetizing a skill set and building a business. And neither one
Oh,
is right or wrong. You just need to be very, very clear about what you are doing. And if you are a solo founder, and you are tied to both the sales process and the delivery process, you are most likely monetizing a skill set, and you just need to be making moves as such. So for us, with our growth agency, when we're doing the big product launches for a lot of big name authors, speakers, coaches, and thought leaders between 2011 to 2019,
mhm.
um, at the end of the day, we had a company name. We had an LLC. We had a team. We had a website. It's called Paper Plane, and we were struggling. Maybe it's our pricing model. We need to go to retainer pricing versus project pricing because of
Mhm.
scope creep. Like, okay, well, retainer is not working. We need to do a hybrid model. And but at the end of the day, me and Jeremy were the ninjas that could get your back out from against the wall. When you're back against the wall, Michael and Jeremy can, the last minute come in and save the day. And so it didn't matter how we packaged it or priced it. The word on the marketplace was that we were the ninjas that could get the shit done. And no matter how much we try to over communicate on our initial discovery call or in the sales process, like they already knew who we were and our reputation.
Yeah.
And so even though we were we had an LLC and we had a business and we were scaling team, our reputation meant we were the product, and that made it so that we couldn't scale because we were getting the most complex problems. We were getting the last minute requests, and we just could never find team or have enough excess capacity to train team to get up to our level. And so, long story short, if we would have just had the objective awareness that we were simply monetizing our skill set, we wouldn't have tried to hire as many people. We wouldn't have tried to scale the way that we tried to scale. We wouldn't
Uh-huh.
have been spending money the way that we spent money. We would have simply just been taking a lot more money off the table personally and investing into other things. And so um, neither one is right or wrong, but you just need to be very aware. Are you building a business? Are you monetizing a skill set? And if you are a founder that has the passion, has the vision, you need to create a predictable and repeatable process and get out of fulfillment as quickly as possible. It's the only way that you can scale and actually build a business is if you package your knowledge and expertise into a predictable and repeatable process that other people can implement to get a world-class result. And that's really the secret sauce.
Wow, man, well said. I love the distinction between starting a company and monetizing a skill set, right? Because I also don't think that there's one right version of business, right? And I think a lot of people, they set themselves up for failure because if it's not going to be a NASDAQ traded thing and if they can't get the 10K in 30 days, then it doesn't even make sense to try, which I think is just silly. And I think a lot of people could have some good ideas if they weren't so sold on the idea of scale. So that way they don't have to like be part of it. All of this is too difficult to do if you don't care about it, in my personal opinion, right? You're not going to do the hard
For sure.
stuff. You're not going to find the clarity after the hard stuff. You're not going to find the repeatable processes that leads to a mechanism that leads to like world-class outcomes. You're just not, you know? And
Yeah.
so it's very fascinating to me how people will essentially put themselves into a situation where they should not even try because the goals that they have kind of come up with are so crazy and asinine that okay, just stay in the 9 to 5 and just get really good at that because you're not serious about trying to go do this thing, right?
Yeah.
So
And it's one of the things that we help every one of our clients, people in our accelerator is like getting a personal definition of success. Being so objective,
100%.
like everyone, of course, everyone wants an 8-figure business from, be able to brag about it on social media. But
Mhm.
like, do you actually understand what an 8-figure business requires of you? The team that it requires, the responsibility, how much payroll is going out every single month, how much you
Yep.
actually have to spend on ads just to keep your pipeline full so that your team can feed their families. You have 30, 60, 100 different employees depending on you.
Mhm.
It's like a whole different level of responsibility than just like being able to post a screenshot of your Stripe account on social media and bragging that you made 8 figures. And
Yep.
so most people have a massively disillusioned vision of what their goals actually are. And most people need to really sit down with their goals and actually think through every single aspect that is that goal, not just the positives, but the negatives,
Mhm.
the challenge, the response. You think you're going to build an 8-figure business without having some lawsuits along the way? Like, are you prepared to get served papers for a, 5, 6, 7-figure lawsuit that could be completely fraudulent and fake? Are you prepared to spend tens of thousands of dollars a month on legal fees to defend yourself? Like,
Yeah.
so there's just all these different concepts, and I'm not wishing that upon anyone, but like those are realities of that size of business. And at the end of the day, you have to get a personal definition of success. Most people think that everything that they desire and value is at the end of exiting for 8 figures or building an 8-figure revenue business.
Mhm.
Everything that you desire and value can't be waiting for you at an artificial finish line. You have to be architecting your business and your life in a way where you're experiencing what you value and what you desire on the way to accomplishing your bigger picture goals. So define what success means to you,
Mhm.
not what you see on Instagram, not what you grew up watching on MTV or in rap music videos or whatever it is, not what Hollywood or television tells you what success. What does success mean for you, and architect the business that's going to get you there and allow you to experience it along the way.
Man, beautifully said, dude. Like I know a lot of people who don't ever get anything going, right? Which is unfortunate. But I also know a lot of people who have found success in a lane that they end up hating, right? And then they're just kind of doing endless pivots, trying to find a version of the business that is going to be easy. Like, it's not going to be easy. It should be worth it, right? But if you don't do that brush clearing intentionally, you don't know that maybe you're set up for some hollow, goals and aspirations versus things that are going to keep you pushing when it's tough, and it's going to be tough, right? It's going to be harder than you think it is. Um, Switching gears again, we had a cool conversation before turning on the recording, and you talked about one of your early clients. They were trying to hire you, and you said no to the job but still got the revenue and the client out of it. Can you talk a little bit more about that situation? Because I think standing your ground and fighting for the work that you want on the terms that you want to do it on is one of the hardest aspects of this whole season. And I'm curious as to how you did that in the early days. How did you know that it was right to push for the no and to push for client work as opposed to a job?
Yeah. So, I mean, this was in the early days of our growth agency, and we had a big name in the industry starting up a new business, and they need a couple marketing guys in that business. And they set us down we flew out to LA to meet with them, and we sat down over breakfast. And basically, it's like, hey, I got two six-figure salaries, one for each of you to help me build this thing. And at that time, I don't think me and my business partner were taking home six figures
Uh-huh.
each. Like revenue wise, the business was generating way more than that. But after expenses and everything, like it would have been a pay increase. And a framework that my business partner Jeremy, brought to the table, but we used for every single client that wanted to work with us was is the four F's: fame, freedom, fortune, and fun. Fame, freedom, fortune, and fun. And so that 4F framework is oftentimes all of the filter that needs to take place to know whether an opportunity is right for you or not. But first and foremost, you have to get clear on what you want. What is an alignment?
Uh-huh.
What like knowing yourself, knowing where you want to go, and then being able to filter different opportunities in front of you. And so this individual was someone that we had a great relationship with. This really didn't fit our metrics for fame, fortune, freedom, and fun, and so we said no. And ultimately, um, a short period later, maybe 8 months later, the same individual came back to us, and we ended up, coming in as like kind of an external CMO role, and at an even higher price point, and building out and driving some really significant results. And so,
Oh.
by all means, is that like a predictable and repeatable recipe for success? No, but ultimately, I think when you stick to your value, when you stick to your definition of success, and you really reserve your time, energy, and effort for the biggest and best opportunities, uh, they will find you. You will find them, and you know, the natural tendency is for most people to operate their business at 100 or 110% capacity, just saying yes to everything. And in the beginning, that is needed. That's required to
Yep.
get something up and off the ground. But as soon as you can start having discernment, and differentiating good opportunities from great opportunities, which is very hard to do, you have to have excess capacity in your business so that when a massive opportunity comes your way, you're not already redlining and your team's on the edge of burnout, and like you just can't handle the biggest and best opportunity that comes your way. And so I'm a huge proponent of you yourself as the founder and your team should be operating at 85% capacity on an average week
Hmm.
so that they can handle the influxes of either a project that comes in on a shorter deadline. You cannot build a business with the success of the business dependent on every single person on your team putting in a solid 40 hours of work every single week. It's just not possible. And so, and especially nowadays with how work is shifting and evolving and changing with AI and the next generation, um, you know, what I've found as an entrepreneur for the last 19 years, I would much rather get 30 hours of focused, dedicated, excited work out of someone than micromanaging the extra 10 hours of work. We get
Oh
the same
man.
exact output. We create loyalty. Our team has freedom and flexibility to handle the things in life, schedule doctor's appointments, get their hair cut, spend time with family and friends. And the work that they're doing in 30 to 35 hours is more than us micromanaging them at 40.
Man, dude, there's so much, like, there's probably 17 episodes of this show off of what you just talked about right there. I mean, first of all, the audacity that anyone is going to come in and work as hard as we're working is just stupid, right? And a lot of people don't even try to communicate the why and why does this matter and why do we think we're good at, like, all of that internal branding stuff, so that way you can get your team to buy in, maybe to a percentage of your buy-in as the founder. Most people don't even try to go do that, right? And it's always very fascinating to me, because one of the things that I talk about with people all the time is, how do I get my people to sell more, right? Or spend more time selling? And half of what actually leads to sales performance is that unstructured time, right? It's the time away from the meeting. It's the gap between the conversation and the follow up to where we're sitting and we're thinking, we're processing on it, right? So when you want to make them perfectly productive, we lose the connection, we lose the trust and the authenticity and everything. And so, like, I've long been on this idea about diminishing returns, about indexing on the wrong points and the wrong activity metrics and everything else like this. But I still run into a lot of people that are thinking that, like, well, salespeople should just be doing more, right? And it's like, going back to your idea, what is enough?
Right.
Because they're not going to come in and sweat all day long. And like, if that's what you're looking for, first of all, you should come talk to me, because I can tell you that that's unrealistic, and you're just going to be looking for unicorns and being pissed off all the time, right? If you can
Yeah.
plan for the 30-hour work week of like 30 hours of focused effort, and then there's time to kind of let it hang off and build the team and the culture and all these other things that are as important, that is when I think we're starting to actually do some really cool things. But no
Yeah.
one's going to come in and work as hard on it as we are. And like, the idea that that's what what we should be looking for is stupid. But I can't tell you how many operators get stuck in that mindset, right? Especially
Yeah,
in
for
in
sure.
our space of like sales and marketing. Well, I did it for free. You can come in and do it for free, and we'll do it for performance only, you know? And it's like,
Right, right.
I get you've been burned, man, but I can't do that,
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, this is you alluded to it as well. This is where the brand work comes in, right?
oh,
As a filter and a magnet that both attracts and repels the wrong talent. You want people that are on fire for what you're on fire about. Are they
yeah.
as dedicated? Do they have as much context as you? Are they going to be working as many hours as you as a founder? No, absolutely not. But when someone's actually naturally magnetized to your business, to your serving your clients, the reps and the work take care of itself. One of my friends who actually is in our accelerator right now, Nico Arapkilis, he has a company called Vision Espresso, and I'm working with him on adapting the vision work he does for sales teams. And so I
Oh,
think this is the next unlock is like one, the brand from the company level, but then also two, helping your sales reps create a vision for themselves where they can see how they can achieve their goals, their dreams, their vision within the comp structure of your company.
yeah.
And so, it's not about just how many closes did you make, how many dials did you make, how many calls did you have, what script are you saying? What word track are you saying? It's like the energy that your team's showing up with. Like
Oh,
they can
man.
say all the wrong words, but if they're excited, if the person, the prospect on the other side can hear that they actually care and are motivated to help, your sales conversions are going to go through the roof. And so much of it is just optimizing to ensure that your your sales team understands how doing the work that the job requires is actually going to get them what they want in their life, not just from the financial commission role, but really connecting the dots to like what
Yeah.
else that means, right? And so yeah, so Nico, Vision Espresso, vision work, like uh vision and brand are two very abstract concepts, but
Yep.
they actually are the missing link into driving more performance with your sales team.
Well, and what I think is really interesting is, sales is one area that I think for the most part does this part the best. Now, there's a lot of sales teams, they don't talk about individual goals in comparison to the company goals, and let's make sure that you can earn what you need to earn here. Like, a lot of that stuff falls by the wayside. But I do think in sales there is the most alignment of like, let's look at your goals, right? If you got real great sales leadership, they know that they got to get the person bought into doing hard work that requires challenge. The easiest way to do that is let's pin this to your goals. Okay. But if you're Susie down in like data entry, right? Assuming you still have data entry in the world of AI, right? We're probably not going, or most founders, entrepreneurs are not really going down that path of like, hey, let's talk about your goals, Susie, right? Because they're thinking, well, you should just be happy enough to have a job, right? Sales is a little bit unique in the form that it's so performance driven that people know that they have to do these things. But I would argue, and this is coming from a guy who doesn't work outside of sales for the most part, we should be doing this with everybody, right? If you
Yeah.
want if you want your customer support people to be excited to de-escalate and serve these people, like they need to be on board with the mission and the why that it matters, right? Not just told to take calls and to manage like handle time, right? As a really bad metric that I see a lot of people putting a lot of weight behind. And man, it's just really, really interesting because for all my frustrations around sales, the fact that it's quant driven does provide a lot of clarity, right? If you're looking at it the right way, right? All these other roles that aren't quant driven, right? It largely just comes down to like, how do we feel about each other, right? Do I like you? Do you like me? Okay, I think you're doing good work because I like you. Sales, there is a divining metric that is the ultimate clarity, right? You have hit your goal or you have not. And I can appreciate that about sales because it does provide a lot of clarity inside of the role, but it also creates some of the friction.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, for
interesting.
sure. And
Yeah.
just, having this space, I mean, I think everybody can kinda understand, hey, you make more sales, you make more money.
Yeah.
But like actually having the care to guide people through a process of like, okay, like great, like you hit these sales metrics. You make an extra $100,000 this year more so than you did last year. What does that mean for you? What type
Mhm.
of different vacation are you taking next summer?
Yeah.
What are you able to do in your community from a philanthropic perspective?
Yep.
What are you able to do investing? You don't need to be looking for a different sales opportunity just to make an extra 20K a year. Like how can you maximize your comp here? Because I would say most founders, if if there was a salesperson that was just absolutely crushing and like it's an unlimited upside in some way, shape, or form, right? Like depending on the structure, but hypothetically speaking, if a sales rep comes in and makes $10 million worth of sales, like they're going to make more money than they made this year, you know? And so long story short, I think having that having that support system where you can really help the salespeople understand there really is an unlimited upside
Yeah.
and they can accomplish everything that they want by being most effective in the role in your company, and they don't need to be looking anywhere else.
Mhm.
And they can get everything that they want in life from absolutely crushing it in your business. Um, I think that's not a conversation. I mean, I say it and it sounds really logical, but most people aren't taking the time to have those conversations and really showing their sales team that they care about their life, not
Oh,
just the bottom line of the business.
man, like this is a unique conversation because I don't get to talk about like this part of it, but a lot of people want to make salespeople out to be transactional, disposable humans, right? Let's just get them in here. If they don't want it enough, we'll fire them and we'll bring in other people who want it more, right? One is not enough to get it done, especially if you're selling something that's a little bit more complex. There's more moving parts, right? There's a longer sales process. And, I have to talk about this with people all the time, right? Because just the perception of sales are so numerous, right? If you pay them a good base, they're going to get lazy. Maybe you have the wrong person doing the wrong job, right? Like, it's easier to say that you want to pay them less, right? And to the other point, right? Some people inadvertently build their comp structures in such weird ways that to them, it's very clean and clear to go off and make more money and stuff. And honestly, that is the thing I appreciate so much about sales is that I'm a performance driven person. I want to perform. I want to figure it out. And I want to be compensated more for doing that. Not everybody has that drive though, right? And I think that's important because if you're data entry and it's just a flat rate or salary or whatever, and you want to go make more, you don't get to go build pipeline and work harder. Like you're kind of, you know, trapped, right? If you will.
Yeah.
Um, whereas as a salesperson, right, I can go get a raise if I want a raise. I can just go work harder and stuff like that. But I also know people, man. Really interesting story. Guy got poached, right? got pushed around the idea of uncapped commissions, right? You can make as much money as you want here, right? And this is a warning story for all sales professionals, because my hot take is that no one gets sold harder than the salesperson coming into the role. Okay. And so they're
That's good.
telling him uncapped commissions, you're going to make as much money as possible. You're going to make more than the managers are, right? So this guy already had a pretty solid role, puts in his notice, he moves over, like, oh my God, we're so glad you're here. Like, you can make as much money as you want, but we can really only onboard one new client a month. So not really uncapped, like in any
Right.
way, shape, or form. You can make as much money as possible, right? And it's such a weird thing because he messaged me and he was pissed, right? And I can get really affronted in those situations as well. But like the other part that I have a little bit of patience for now as a founder is like, at least that company was trying to set expectations. They missed the window, their comp structure is flawed and everything, but they were trying to tell him how much he could go bring in their direction, and that they could handle. It just didn't line up with his goals, right? So
Right.
thankfully this guy was smart enough. He got out of that job. He went into a role to where he could earn in relation to his goals and what his dreams are and stuff. But that's one of the hardest things about selling is, of course, they're going to tell you that you're going to make all the money in the world. Like, we have to be discerning enough to vet that opportunity well, because I mean, I've been baited and switched. I've had goals moved on me. I've been rug pulled. I mean, every sales professional, who's not wet behind the ears has in some way, shape, or form. So it's the hardest part of the job is like, do I want to bring my full focus, effort, and capacity to selling to this thing? Or am I going to be looking over my shoulder the whole time, right? At comp and stuff like this, Because, man, here's another thing that happens sales side. They'll start looking at all the commission going out the door, and they start thinking of it as a cost center, because they've kind of just like lost the thread of, well, someone went and got this business and brought it in here, so we're making money off of this. They just see big, huge 5, sometimes 6-figure commission checks, and they start thinking like, man, are we paying these people like too much? Couldn't we save some money here? And it's like, they're doing the work you don't want to do, right? And they're coming in, let's be honest, at a fraction of their value compared to something like an engineer or, a financial person and stuff like this. So it is the coolest thing I've ever done because of just how different the opinions and perspectives are, right? And it's hard because everyone comes to it with their own experience. So I get to I get to spend a lot of time trying to untangle the beliefs, because some things I can work with, but other ones I just can't, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
it's challenging too. I mean, especially if there's a sales rep that comes in when like the marketing budget's not really, big and
hmm
they're drumming up leads and they're becoming really efficient. I mean, attribution is naturally a difficult thing
100%. Yep.
to track. And now all of a sudden you have, 10 sales reps, you have a marketing team, you're spending $100,000 a month on ads. Like who's getting credit for
Yes. Oh
it?
yeah.
And so yeah, I think naturally compensation plans shift and evolve and change, but like especially for people that have been with you for a long time, that when it was risky for them to even say yes, I'll do
Yep.
sales for you, like you got to take care of them. And as a
Oh man.
founder, there needs to be, there's different levels of risk, there's different levels of efficiency where the 10th or the 30th sales rep that's coming into a system that's already tried and true and they're getting spoon-fed leads from an SDR, like that comp structure looks way different than somebody that's out there hunting down their own business,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
yeah, I think naturally these are complex issues. There's no one size fits all answer,
Nope.
but naturally as the business evolves, I think the sales position gets easier and easier. But that doesn't mean that you should rug pull or really drastically shift the compensation for people that are loyal.
Oh man. One of my favorite questions to ask people, right, is if your salesperson is on a base of 50, but they sell like $1 million, right? And after compensation, they come back in, OTE was, 250. But let's say they come back in and they want to raise just on their base, right? If they've proven themselves to be an asset, invest in assets that are working well within your business, right? Like, no salesperson wants to be too lopsided on their commission for forever, right? It doesn't lead to sustainability, right? It's about working collaboratively. And so all these people who have got this, man, it's like a deep philosophical belief that if you pay salespeople any base, they'll just get lazy. Like, it's deeper than I would have thought it would be, even whenever I asked that question in that way. right? Very, very fascinating. Um, Michael, I want to be super respectful of your time, my friend, and I'd like to move into the second part of the call, right? I ask everyone the same 3 questions, and then I can let you get on with your day. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your story with people. When the first one is really specific to you, if someone's going to go out tomorrow, first time, right? They've never put themselves out there meaningfully, and they're thinking about things like brand, right? Putting themselves out there. What's your advice for someone who's going to go off and hang a shingle and try to put themselves out there? How should they be thinking about it?
First and foremost, do something that is in alignment with your values, is authentic, and there's no way around it. You're like, if you're going from just getting started to putting yourself out there, it's going to be messy. You're going to look back. If you don't look back even 12 months from now, let alone 5 years from now, and think that the videos that you're posting or the content you're posting is not good, then you're doing it wrong. And so it's all about taking imperfect action. It's
Well,
about, especially posting to social media. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I don't like posting to social media, but there's ways to leverage your strengths, and put yourself out there in the way that's most in alignment, that lights you up, that leans on your strengths. So to make that tangible, I don't like doing, face to camera selfie style videos and just posting on social media. I would much rather have conversations like this. I would much rather speak on stage. I would much rather host our own event and record it. And
mhm.
so, leaning into my strengths, I can, through my podcast, through our events, through me speaking at other people's events, I can then record that, and that becomes my social media content. So I don't actually have to create social media content. I just get to do what's more natural to me.
Yeah, well
You're
said.
not competing against anyone else in the industry. You're competing against who you were yesterday. And the only way that
Oh,
you can fail is by not taking action and not becoming a half a degree, a quarter degree, 1% better than you were yesterday. And so take putting yourself out there as a experimental process.
oh,
Even on sales calls, even in networking events, even in, you go to a conference, like those conversations are opportunities to try different messaging, to speak different concepts, and watch how people react to you. And so when you start to treat life as an experiment, and it's something that the only way you can't get better is if you don't play the game, everything becomes easier.
dude, I'm floored, man. That might be the dopest answer to that question I've ever heard, and largely
Let's
because
go.
it's like, I mean, it's so consistent with like how I think about things, right? Because like I I mean, in this version, I'm getting better about taking imperfect action, but I come from a personality that wants it to be right before I start, before I put myself out there. And most of my kind of change is about getting okay with imperfect action and getting and pushing myself towards that. But I love that line of like, you only fail by not taking action today, because the other part I think about to myself is like, I don't need to be perfect today, but I can learn something from this that I can use in my next conversation and my next interaction that makes me a little bit better. And that's honestly the major motivation for getting this far, right? Is removing all that pressure.
Yeah.
Beautifully said, dude. Holy
You
smokes.
have to you have to take an approach where you recognize you're building a skill set, and you're gonna suck at first. I
Yeah.
mean, even me with my podcast, I've been wanting to do a podcast for 10 years. I just published the first episode January 26th this year. I
Epic,
think
dude.
we're
Congrats.
20 episodes in now, 21, 22, or 20,
Mhm.
I think, maybe 19. Even in those 19 episodes, from the first one to the 19th one, I've gotten so much better. And
Same.
so, it's just one of those things where you just have to put in the reps. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Epic.
Yeah.
Um, in the world of social media, right? Things like Twitter, right? We sell these business takes, these business dogma and lessons and everything. I'm curious, what is the tweet that you can see now in business leadership that you can appreciate, but you had to learn the lesson the hard way?
Oh man, the tweet and the business lesson I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, something you would have argued before, maybe when you were newer, younger, less experienced, but now you see it and you're like, yep,
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, you said it at the beginning, and I was kind of nodding up and down because I got started in entrepreneurship through direct sales, and then I thought marketing was complete BS. And I was like, then I like learned the value of marketing, but I still thought brand was complete BS. And so obviously our conversation has been a lot around brand, but like literally those like that concept of of brand being something that isn't just some fluffy, airy, nice, pretty to look at thing, but is actually something that makes every other action inside the business that much more effective is something that took me a long time to understand.
Wow.
From a sales perspective, like we understand that a warm lead is better than a cold lead, right? Like a referral is like the easiest lay down sale ever because
Hmm.
there's already trust and credibility and authority built in before you even pick up the call. And
Yeah.
that's what brand does. When you build authority, when you build credibility, when you get clear with who you are for and who you're not, who you are with and who you're against, when you get clear about this is what we do for this type of person, you get it down to concise, powerful, memorable, repeatable language. Every single person that comes to you is a warm lead. They already are opting in, wanting to work with you, and the sales process then becomes more of a disqualification process. And so,
100%.
it's those different levers of brand, marketing, sales are things that early in my career, I didn't understand the power of all of those things working in sync, and I devalued brand. I valued brand lower than marketing, and marketing lower than sales. And in a lot of ways, it's the inverse. So,
I mean,
those things that took me a long time to figure out.
as an aside, I had a very frighteningly similar situation, right? Because whenever I was selling for AT&T and Chase and bigger regional banks, like, there is a brand, right? And so I'm walking around with all this brand around me without appreciating any of it, and my sales coach always had this line, and he said it as a pejorative thing, which I now find really funny, but back in the day when I was drinking all my, like, ego sales juice, I thought it was a really great line, is he would say, "Well, if you've got great marketing, you don't need great salespeople." Right?
Interesting,
And,
yeah.
I remember him saying this thing, I'm like, "Why do we wanna make this harder? Like, why wouldn't we wanna be working to make it easier?" Right? And I think if I can pull out just one thing that you said just right there's a vibe, right? And you gotta have a lot of calls before you can feel this, right? But there's a difference between talking with people who get it or are interested and are open to it and kind of have a sense of who you are, and why are we having this meeting? There's a world apart between these two things, right? And I think if I can kind of zero in on the thing that you said, brand is having less of those conversations. It doesn't mean you're going to get every deal, but it means that there's perspective, shared perspective, right? There's a ledge for purchase in this conversation as opposed to trying to win someone over, right? So I love that distinction, right? So is it fair to say that you're developing a brand when you're having more calls where there's that kind of natural alignment and affinity and less of that like cold crank start? Is that a good way to think about it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the sales conversations have fewer objections. There's less friction in general when you have solid brand, when the marketing is effective and they're generating the right qualified leads.
Epic.
I think what you mentioned kind of a tweetable. One of the quotes that we say in our workshop is I think it's an Abraham Lincoln quote. He might have gotten it from somebody else, but it gets attributed to him. It's like, give me the task to chop down a tree in 6 hours. I'm going to spend the first four sharpening the axe.
Yep.
And or I think the quote is actually, I'll spend four sharpening the axe. And the first time I heard that, I took it as, oh, I'm going to just spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe and then the last two chopping down the tree with a sharp axe. And it's actually the exact opposite. Like that's the approach that most people take with entrepreneurship is they have an idea, they get charged with the task of starting a business, and then they spend 4 years just ruminating over it, sharpening before they take any action. And
Yeah.
so cutting down that tree is about sharpening, taking a swing, sharpening, taking a swing,
Yep.
sharpening, taking a swing. And that's really what entrepreneurship is actually like. You have to put your product, your service, your message out in the marketplace and allow the friction, allow the no's,
Yep.
allow the dissenters to help refine that into a more potent offer, into a more potent service or product
Mhm.
that then is scalable. Most people are trying to automate and scale before they actually even know what to automate or what to scale.
Yep.
And so that hard process of getting in the weed with your prospects, your prospective clients, and getting the feedback, iterative quick feedback loops is how you scale fast because at first you need to know what to scale.
Well, it's funny because I love that quote, right? I'm very much a planner and a thinker, and I used to take it the wrong way as well. But the thing that I can appreciate now is that if you've never swung the axe, you don't even know what is sharp enough.
Exactly. Yes.
So like, you're going to spend 4 hours. It might have been three, right? But the person that's been swinging that axe for a little bit knows when that axe is actually dull, right? And they also know when they need a fleet of lumberjacks to come in and clear this wooded area versus, well, let's just double down and be a little bit more diligent and disciplined. We can get this thing out without having to create a scaled version of this whole thing, right? Like you got to be close enough to it to have perspective on what's actually going to work. Last question, Michael, and I'll let you go on your way. Independent of what they're going to be doing, someone wants to go start a business as a founder. What is your word of warning or nugget of wisdom?
Phew. No one's coming to save you. Everything's on your response. Everything's on you. I think the natural tendency as founders is that we want to start a business to create freedom, and we have to get radically honest with what that freedom is. Um, and oftentimes, along the way of building a successful business, we get wrapped up in what the world deems as success. So just kind of, loop back to what we were talking about earlier, your definition of success. Freedom is the ultimate flex, not the Ferrari in the garage. And so as you start to scale your business and you have excess cash flow, most people end up escalating, elevating the cost of their lifestyle prematurely. And one of the things that took me way too long to learn, I started my marketing company in 2010 at the bottom of the Great Recession.
Yeah.
And the first 3 to 4 years of entrepreneurship for me were extremely difficult. I didn't realize how economics and how the greater macro economic landscape was actually impacting the actions that I was taking,
Mhm.
causing a lot of friction. I thought I was inadequate. I thought I just need to be better. I thought I just need to build more skill
Yeah.
sets. And so just really being aware of when you are sailing with the wind and when the wind blowing in your face and taking those seasons as opportunity to make adjustments and navigate as such. So right now, in the personal brand space, we're in a trust recession,
Yeah.
and I'm working as harder than I've ever worked before. Not out of stress, not out of fear, out of mission, purpose, and impact, knowing that the tides are going to change. And it might change a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, but I'm paddling out to catch that next wave in a very, very big way. And so I'm not stressed out. I'm not trying to maximize pipeline. I'm not overspending on ads, knowing that we're flying into a headwind.
Mhm.
And so just words of caution are just don't try to force growth in a season where economic conditions are not in your favor.
Mm.
Lay a solid foundation, start sowing your sails so that when the winds are at your back, you can pop up all of your sails and you're blowing past everyone else. So, uh, you know,
100%.
kind of using some metaphors there, but hopefully that lands. And it just takes a lot longer. It takes more money, more time to be successful, especially in this world where there's so much opportunity. You have to put the constraints on yourself. For the longest time,
Oof.
time and money were big constraints. And now with AI, time and money aren't as big constraints as they once were. And you can do a lot more with a lot less, which means that it's very easy to get shiny object syndrome and start doing a bunch of different things. The only way you build something big, the only way you will actually achieve freedom is by getting clear on what you want, having it be something that you can focus on for a long period of time and not jumping from thing to thing to thing, starting over,
Yeah.
17 times over 17 years. So just figure out what you want, figure out how you can serve and create an impact in this world. Nothing's more fulfilling. And if you are doing something that's fulfilling, impactful, valuable to the world, you will make money at it.
Epic, man. Well said. If people want to keep up with you, learn more about what you're working on, read your content, learn more about your businesses, where's the best place for people to come hang out with you?
Yeah, Instagram at Michael R. Hunter. That's the best way to follow along, reach out to me, DM me if you have any questions. You can check out personalbrand.com, my personal website, michaelrhunter.com. Also on LinkedIn as well. But I post most of the content on Instagram currently.
Perfect.
And on YouTube, podcast, Six Fig Podcast.
Awesome.
Those are the places where people can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Michael, man, thank you so much for doing this, dude. I really appreciate it. I love the idea of putting constraints on yourself, right? Because to your other point, since no one is coming to save you, no one is there to really guide you, right? We have to be pulling this out of ourselves. And I think if people can slow down and really hear that, I think it'll really help people get traction and, find the success that they're looking for. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about it.
Thanks so much for having me, John.
Awesome, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.